The Weight of Silence, Book 1, Song 5, What Returns in Darkness. The dark has its own way of keeping count. Chapter 9, Night's Reminder. Gage woke with a sound locked in his throat and sweat cooling fast on his skin. The dream clung. For a moment, the room felt like a dorm, rope beds and other breaths around him. Then it thinned, leaving only the house and his own breath in the dark. His heart raced. The dream stayed clear in the only way that mattered. The letter had been under his palm and then not. In the dream, the seal flashed red once and slid away, like the ground had shifted. Chalk lines blurred, cobble seams opened. He reached for it, and his hand felt slow, like moving through water. A voice called. He could not tell if it was his or Alaric's. It sounded far away, as if coming from across a river. He reached for his pocket while he was still half inside the dream. His fingers found the unworn bead and closed hard until the carved edges pressed against his skin. The weight steadied him, like a hand on a shoulder. "I won't fail again," he whispered into the dark. He matched his breath to the bead, thumb circling it, the way he'd taught the first year at the academy range. 3 in, 3 out. Counting gave his body something steady to follow. Sweat cooled. The room came back, one piece at a time. The faint smell of oiled leather from his ranger's kit in the corner, the stone wall holding its night chill, and the soft scrape of a mouse. He let the bead rest in his palm and told himself the same thing as always. Carry it. Don't drop it. Don't say it if you can't fix what breaks. His breath steadied. Then it cracked. What if silence is the true failure? The thought hit a locked place. His chest tightened. He pushed it down. He closed his eyes and pushed the thought away, not with anger, but with practice. Not now. He counted until the ache behind his eyes gave up. He set the bead back in his pocket, flat against the seam where it lived, and kept his hand there. Alaric's bead had worked forward while he slept. The cool metal touched his cheek. He did not tuck it back. He sat up and stayed that way, knees drawn, feet flat on the floor. Lying down again would invite the dreams back. He watched the window instead, a darker square inside the dark, until outlines separated. Frame, ledge, the outer leaves of an elm moving in a light breeze. He did not move except to breathe. He let the house creak and settle around him. Let the night finish its work without needing him to help it. Stiffness built in his back and shoulders, a slow burn that turned staying seated into a small vow. Every so often, his thumb found the edge of the pocket seam and pressed. The bead pressed back. He did not speak again. Birdsong lifted outside, familiar and insistent. Morning was coming. Gage unfolded his legs and stood, joints stiff and sore. Tiredness sat behind his eyes. It wouldn't stop him now, but it would cost him later. He accepted it. He checked what he always checked. Bowstring, by feel in the dim morning light, clean and smooth. Satchel strap quiet. A bundle of cheese, bread, dried meat, and fruit sat on the counter. His mother must have set it out sometime in the night. She had taken to sleeping later into the morning since the notice came. He touched Alaric's bead and let it rest forward, visible. His hand went to his pocket and paused there long enough to choose again. The unworn bead stayed where it belonged. Carried, not worn. Boots on, breath steady. The dream was not gone. It was only set aside. He opened the door carefully, so the latch wouldn't wake his mother. He took a breath and stepped into the blue of early morning. Armor on. Silence in place. He could carry it one more day. Chapter 10, The Steady Work of Vows. Later that week, a dream returned as a memory. Intact at first, then it shifted. Dusk clung to the water. The river ran fast and brown. Boards lay side by side at the narrow crossing. Old planks green with moss. Gage remembered the smell first. Wet wood. Cold stone, iron in the current. He was smaller in the memory. The boards seemed wider. The gaps felt big enough to swallow a foot. Alaric stood steady on the bank, boots set where dirt met rock. He lifted a flat stone, weighed it in his palm, and sent it sidearm across the current. The stone skipped twice, touched the surface, and sank. See, Alaric said. Even rivers have rhythms. Wait for the still water. Gage squinted at the flow. It all looked like motion to him. Ripples crossed ripples. Swirls at the plank ends, thin runs of water pushing into the seams. Alaric picked up another stone, smaller, and tossed it upstream. For a moment, the surface calmed. Then the current closed over it again. Count it, Alaric said. 1, 2. Go on 2. Don't fight the fast part of the water. Step in the stillness. Gage set a boot on the first board. Moss slipped under his boot. He waded through one count, then another, and then took the next step when the water's surface went smooth beside the second plank. He could feel his jaw tighten. Alaric held a steady hand near his shoulder, close enough to help if he slicked again. Third board, fourth. He held his breath too long. On the fifth, the river took his fear and yanked. His heel slid. The moss lifted under his boot with a sound that warned of a fall. Alaric's grip found the satchel strap at Gage's back and pulled. Not hard, just enough. Gage's foot planted again. The river kept running as if nothing had happened. Alaric laughed, not at him, but in relief. That's the trick, Shadow. When you fall, the river doesn't laugh. It just waits to carry you. You decide when you ride. Gage forced a steady breath and ignored the narrow boards and fading light. The current sounded steady now that he could hear the calm parts. He took the last 3 steps fast, inside the counts, and reached the far side with both boots and his pride mostly intact. Alaric came behind him, lighter than a man his size should be, and bumped Gage's shoulder with his own. Again, he said, because once wasn't enough of a lesson. They crossed back. Gage stayed on the bank and watched Alaric's steps. Alaric's eyes stayed on the river, reading where the current pushed, where the water spun, where moss made the boards slippery. How do the boards not wash away? Gage asked, the thoughts spilling out. Alaric spoke without breaking focus. It's true. The river won't keep the boards in place for us. The current shifts them. Moss loosens them. Floods push them away. The village sets them back. Or else there's no crossing path. A promise is the same. It doesn't hold because it's heavy or strong. It holds because you keep setting it back when it slips. He stepped off the last plank and onto the soft bank. He reached for one of Gage's beads and pulled the bead for his promise to keep his words honest forward until it tapped his cheek, then let it go. Keep this visible, he said. Not for me, for you. So when you forget the count, you remember the weight. Gage touched the bead, the way his fingers always wanted to, and looked to the river again. What if you're not there to catch me? The words slipped out before he could stop himself. The words made the air feel cooler. Alaric didn't smile right away. He ruffled Gage's hair and then stopped doing that because it felt like the wrong answer. He set his hand on the back of Gage's neck, warm and steady. He looked into his brother's eyes and said, "Then you'll catch yourself, because you'll have listened long enough to know when and where to step, and one day you will be able to catch someone else too." Gage tried to fit that into the space where fear had been. It didn't fit clean, not yet. He looked at the river because it didn't judge him while he thought. They crossed again. Alaric had him lead. "Count out loud if you need to," he said. "No shame in numbers." 1, Gage said, small. 2. He moved on 2, and the board said yes. 1, 2, yes, 1. He caught himself rushing to the next plank before the water gave him the right moment. He stopped, swallowed the hurry, and waited for the calm to show itself. 2. Yes, on the far bank, his laugh surprised him. It came out like a breath he'd been holding too long. Alaric's grin came back, full this time. "There he is," he said. He turned his face toward home, toward the square beyond the trees where their mother would be at the basin, and their father's to-do list would lie under a stone. "Again," he said, because practice turns knowing into skill. They practiced until dusk gave its last reasonable light. The crossing boards darkened from green to near black. The river sounded a little louder as it cooled. Alaric finally pointed Gage toward the path. "Enough," he said. "You want your feet to work tomorrow." They walked. Alaric spoke in small pieces the whole way, short notes he could remember and use later. Don't step where your heel wants to slide. Watch for places the ground pretends to be dry. Listen for the one leaf that doesn't match the wind. None of it sounded like a speech. He remembered all of it. At the bend where the path widened, Alaric tugged Gage's bead forward again and shaped his mouth like he was about to ruin the serious moment. "You'll catch up," he said. "Then I'll get to say you learned it all from me." Gage tried to look offended. It didn't hold. He playfully shoved Alaric's shoulder and took off at a run. Alaric let him win for 2 breaths, then reached and hooked him by the strap again and turned the run into a tangle that ended in both of them laughing on the lane. The memory held, warm and whole, until the edges thinned into something darker. The boards began to blur. The river's voice shifted. The sound that filled the space was no longer rushing water, but the sound of a seal breaking and paper slipping away. Gage turned back to the bank and was alone. He reached for the satchel strap on his back and found nothing. He could almost see the river taking Alaric's letter in a neat arc, the red wax flashing once, then sliding from his fingers. "Al," he screamed, and the name vanished in the hiss of the current. A laugh in Alaric's voice was gone. When it came, it wasn't a word at all, just a call from a distance he couldn't measure and a direction he couldn't find. Gage leaped to a crossing board he couldn't see, and instead felt the shock of the cold river pulling him under. He woke with a gasp and went to his pocket. The unworn bead met his palm with its small, solid weight. He closed his fist around the bead until the edges of the nightmare began to fade. He forced his breathing to steady. He matched breath to bead, 3 in, 3 out, while he waited for the last of the river sound in his head to fade. Somewhere outside. A fox called. Night still held. He closed his eyes, trying to picture his house. He pictured his mother cutting meat and washing at the basin. He envisioned his father's daily to-do list under the stone and his boots missing from the entry, because duty never waited. He let those pictures sit. He didn't add how his parents' faces would look if he were to speak the truth and shatter something in their family they didn't know was brittle. His thumb moved around the circle. 3 in, 3 out. A thin thought with teeth came. What if the silence is the river carrying you away? He pushed the thought away by habit. Not now. He set the bead flat along the seam where it lived and kept his hand there a breath longer than he needed to. As he sat up in bed, Alaric's bead worked forward. He let it rest against his cheek. He lay back and stared into the dark until the dark turned to the gray of morning. When bird song started, he began to move. The silence stayed where he'd put it. Deep, heavy, carried. He rose and met his eyes in the mirror. Even in dreaming, he could not undo his loss of the letter. The songs are only beginning. Add your voice. Like, comment, and subscribe, and walk with us as new threads are woven. The tapestry grows with every listener who joins it.